morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Monday, the 18th day of the month of August, 2025, Monday of the 20th week of the year, the 20th week in Ordinary Time. We continue to move through the early history of Israel, now in the book of Judges. So we left Joshua on Saturday, having come into the Promised Land, leaving Moses behind because, again, he struck a rock twice that he should not have struck, which again shows that God could be a tad bit petty, maybe. But even worse now is how God responds, to Israel and its fickleness. So in the book of Judges, again, Israel just doesn't seem to remember everything that God has promised it or remembered everything that God has done for it. And so it just relapses constantly into chasing the next shiny object in front of them, which happens to be the worship of idols and gods without power and all kinds of other disastrous sorts of things. And God's anger flares up against the Israelites because they are worshiping the Baal and the Ashtaroth and all these other kinds of deities and practices and whatever it is. And of course, it's not in keeping with anything that God is saying. There's a lot of sacrifice that happens, human sacrifice even, all these other kinds of dastardly things that are going on. And so basically God is naturally distressed at this. A whole bunch of questions can be asked, though. Wouldn't God know if this was going to happen because God is all-knowing? You see, again, the omniscient God and the omnipotent God runs into a bit of a problem when we look at the Old Testament. Again, Thomas Aquinas was wonderful in trying to prove God's omnipotence or omniscience or whatever it is. But did he read the Old Testament enough? Or did he reflect upon it enough? Because here is a God who basically is going back and forth between love and hate with Israel because Israel keeps disappointing this God again and again. Then why does God ask Israel to become God's prime possession, to become God's only possession, its dearest possession? So we have the situation again in which Israel is in dire straits because, again, God is very angry at the way Israel is behaving and not remembering who it is and to whom it belongs. Again, the one and the only God. Judges now are raised up to be able to help the people. And while the judges live, everything is good and God blesses the people and things like that. But as soon as the judge dies, the people then revert back to their old practices. So it's this whole back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The thing within it, though, is that God is punishing the people left and right, is angry at what they're doing, but it is not giving up on them, which is, again, a very contradictory kind of thing we might think to our own small, finite human reasoning. But it is, again, the way in which perhaps God's omniscience, may be demonstrating itself, that even in the midst of all of this disappointment and despair, disappointment of God, despair of the people of Israel, there is still a promise yet to be filled, which God is not giving up on. Again, for God to choose another people, for God to basically abandon Israel would really demonstrate the fact that God is not in control of anything. And that keeps running from one thing to the next, hoping that it's going to work out. But this is a God basically who sticks with this stubborn, stiff-necked people who are going to show no thanks, no gratitude, no graciousness, whatever, before a God who has done great wonders, for it. But yet God remains steadfast and faithful to this people. Something to remember for all of us. Again, when we think again that our faults and our failings basically will throw us away from God and make God unhappy with us and make God punish us. Again, what the gospel tries to show us again and again is that God is greater than any fault or failing that we have. And God is greater than any mistakes that we make. And that God is not quick to punish and destroy, because that would show that ours is not a God of life, but a God of death. And ours is always the God of life, who wants what is best for us, and who constantly tries to lead us, if we would just be willing to be led, into what is best for us, what is good, what is glorious, and what is wonderful for us. In Matthew's gospel today, we have this rich young man who comes to Jesus basically trying to show off how pious he is and how devout he is, hopefully perhaps to get a front row seat at the second coming or whatever, whenever the kingdom finally arrives and whatever it is. And, and he basically asks Jesus a kind of non sequitur question, or a question that basically is more rhetorical. What must I do to inherit eternal life? And the man knows exactly what to do, because God says, it's like love the God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself, and all these kinds of things like that. And the man says, I've done that, so great, I can move right on in. And Jesus says, wait, if that's just about you and God. It's not about you and God. It's about you and God and others. So again, sell your possessions, give to the poor, and come follow me. And the man walks away downcast and saddened because his possessions are many. And he would rather hold on to them, than hold on to what it is that Jesus is offering, to hold on to what it is that will give his life even more meaning than he can imagine. because he is afraid, of moving past what, again, society and culture have held up as the proper way either to live in this world or, even worse, to be a person of faith in this world. If we follow the world's example of what it means to have faith, which means that you can do whatever you want just as long as you pray or ask for forgiveness, or that you can be whoever you want, even it means stepping on people just as long as you give to the church, or you don't cause waves with the church, or whatever it is. Again, it's often been said that if you preach a gospel of love and cuteness and care and whatever it is, nobody cares. But preach a gospel of challenge, and all of a sudden you're a criminal. You're somebody that needs to be put away, that needs to be put out of sight, put to the margins, because you dare to ask us to be more as God asks us to be more. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.